Hey everyone, thanks for coming. Like or comment if you enjoy, or subscribe and check the links below for more interesting stories. Chapter 2. The high school years go by quickly when you're having a good time, and I did. The strength and throwing accuracy Hal gave me got me on the boys' baseball team, where I was a star pitcher. I threw the ball up to 85 miles an hour, rarely seen in a high school kid, and never in a girl. Actually, I could have thrown the ball well over 100 miles per hour, but I had to hold myself back or people would realize there was something special going on. My speed was explained as being the advantage of being small, like a lightweight boxer being much faster than a heavyweight, but not as strong a hitter. In middle school, I'd played unofficial baseball with a group of boys who recognized my talents. When the playing field wasn't being used, we went out there and practiced. I was still 12 when people started hanging around the field watching us. They were amazed at what I could do with the ball. The high school baseball coaches came around one day, and the boys made sure I was on the mound all the time. They wanted me in the boys' team. The coaches seemed interested, but were they impressed enough to let me on the team? There had been a few girl quarterbacks around the country. This usually happened at a small school where they had a hard time recruiting enough boys to make up a football team. So, being a pitcher on a boys' baseball team wouldn't be such a big deal, you'd think. And it wasn't. I made the boys' team in my freshman year. I was on television all the time. Now, I learned something about the world. People said bad things about me on the internet. I wouldn't have thought it was possible. Complete strangers on the internet's social media said all kinds of terrible things about me. Even worse were the websites that a few people started about me. They questioned my sexual orientation or said I must have gone to bed with the coach to get on the team. They said I was making out with everybody on the team. There was nothing I could do about these people. I didn't know their names or addresses. They were internet trolls, jealous cowards who attack from the safety of anonymity and distance. I was told my only strategy was to ignore them. Being young, I felt the pain of rejection strongly. Kids couldn't deal with this. I complained to the school principal, and a teacher took it upon herself to counsel me. Mrs. Steinfeld, one of my teachers, approached one day and explained these trolls. "These kids are being defiant. You are beautiful, intelligent, and you're often on television. You're a sports star. You have straight A's and high morals. All these things represent what people want in kids. You're the daughter every parent wants. You're the student every teacher wants, the young person society wants. You fulfill all the authorities' expectations. So these kids attack you. Don't let them bother you. There's one last question a person should ask before she dies. Do I feel good about who I was? Okay, but what do I do now? There isn't anything you can do. Just try to think of the future. When you go to college, nobody will ask how your high school was, and you will care least of all. There was a TV commercial years ago I never forgot. A young woman had 3 horses and brought a 4th, a miniature horse only 2 feet high. She put the little horse in the corral with the 3 normal-sized horses. They sniffed the little horse and ran away from him. The little horse had very short legs and couldn't run. He walked towards the big horses who kept running away. He followed them everywhere but couldn't get within 50 feet of them. Finally, the little horse gave up and stared at the big horses and towards the house where the young woman watched out of her window. It was very sad. The little horse didn't understand why he was being rejected. Then the woman ordered something online. That was what the commercial was about. She ordered a dog door for the front door of her house. Now the little horse could come into the house and be with the woman anytime he wanted. She talked to him and patted him on the head while she read a book or watched television. Intelligent animals like horses and dogs love close contact with humans. We must seem like gods to them. The little horse ended up better off than the other horses. Keep plugging away, Teresa. You will be better off than these trolls. They can't follow where you will go. I saw why the trolls were angry. They knew they couldn't go where I was going. I'd have a good life. They wouldn't. What they said makes no sense. They were really mixed up big time. I blamed the parents for not raising them right. My parents did a good job teaching me the important things. What I learned came to mean something when I was 10. I didn't know what Hal would mean to me at first, but gradually I came to understand that someday I would have great responsibilities. By the time I was 15, I was almost grown up. My mom, who came from another town, went to a Catholic high school. A teacher told her something the ancient Greeks said: "An unexamined life is not worth living. Know thyself." Mom said too many people never question who they are and how they're doing. This is a fast track to disaster. They're not equipped to get through troubles and be successful. The television news showed examples every day. My parents gave a good example of the kind of people to be. I'd have to write a book about them to explain. It's enough to say that I wanted to be a woman like Mom, and I wanted a husband like Dad. That says it all, don't you think? So I thought a lot about who I was and who I wanted to become. This assured I would get there. Nothing else bad happened to me in high school, besides the social media bozos' hatred. The kids I hung around with weren't like the phony kids in Hollywood movies. They couldn't be because nobody likes obnoxious elitists who form cliques and wear fancy clothes, drive expensive cars, and lord it over the less beautiful and talented. Eventually, people like that have nobody's respect. In the movies, the cheerleaders are cliquish snobs who make all the other girls feel inferior. In my school, the cheerleaders were my friends. They were among the best athletes in school and admired a girl pitcher on the boys' team. They suggested I try out for their cheerleader team, but I decided I had my share of celebrity. Let some other girl cheer. Anyways, my schoolmates were good kids, and they probably were at your school too. In the beginning of my senior year, still only 16 after skipping the 6th grade, I began to think about college. I had one more thing to worry about that other kids didn't. What about Hal? Did the government know anything about him that might guide me in what to study? It was time to meet Jan Struthers for an update. She agreed to a meeting in a nearby Burger King where the noise gave privacy as good the Sahara Desert to update each other's thoughts and info about Hal. When I was 10 years old, I hadn't worried much about how the government had found Hal before he merged with me. Now I was curious and asked Jan about it. When you were 3 years old, an amateur astronomer in Arizona was looking for comets. He had a telescope in his backyard. He noticed a curved streak of light in the sky. A comet will move in a straight line, not a curve. He sent a message to all his comet hunting friends, and the government heard about it. The military sent up planes to watch this thing coming down to Earth. It was a 100-foot wide white ball. It headed down to Framingham, and helicopters watched it reach the ground. They thought it might bounce or explode when it hit the ground. It didn't. It just went into the ground without rustling the leaves on the trees it passed through. The helicopter crews couldn't believe their eyes. President Sheffield authorized a secret office in the Pentagon, the Office of Orbital Phenomena Surveillance, OOPS for short. It was supposed to keep track of all the space junk we put into orbit. Its real purpose was to watch for anything going on anywhere in the world that would be something Hal was doing. 7 years later, Hal merged with you and gave off enough heat for a few hours to bring in the fire trucks. This was the kind of thing OOPS was looking for. They came to your street and aimed sensitive infrared cameras at everything. They saw the heat coming from you. President Gardner had an intelligence agency set up your watchers. When did you get involved? When you rented that 2001 A Space Odyssey movie, they knew you were aware of Hal. The president wanted somebody to go talk to you and find out what you knew. But you were only 10 years old. I was chosen because they thought you would trust a young woman. Jan and I updated each other on our thoughts. I hadn't heard a peep out of Hal in the 6 years since he merged with me. It was a safe bet he didn't travel a million light years just to watch me take showers, and neither could he be interested only in me. His interest must be the world, but for some mysterious reason he chose me as his base of operations. Perhaps he had no real interest in me at all, but only used my senses to see and hear the world I lived in. Perhaps he'd leave me sometime and merge with somebody else. As for why so much time was spent watching me, Jan revealed that no other Hal had been detected anywhere in the world. I was an exclusive club of one. How do you know there's no other Hal? Did you ask around? No. If we did that, somebody would talk, and even if we didn't give your name, your watchers would know that's why they watch you. They would give you away. Years ago, we noticed a column of disturbed air above you that goes right up to space. We see it with Doppler radar. It's too faint to be seen by those weather station Doppler radars because they scan horizontally, but we can see it with a radar beam aimed down. We sent up a spy satellite looking for those columns, and yours was the only one we found. How much does a satellite cost? Over $100 million. Mostly it's the rocket. Tell you what, give me the money and I'll give you Hal. The talk moved on. What Hal was made of and how he worked was still a mystery. More important was his purpose. What could that be? It could be anything. Jan was reminded of those lines in the movie Contact. A female astronomer is about to go on a trip to meet an alien race. Technicians gave her a cyanide pill, saying they could think of 1,000 things that could go wrong, but what worried them the most was what they couldn't think of. It's the same here. There's no guessing why Hal is here. Jan told me I must get as broad an education as possible to be ready to deal with any unimaginable challenge Hal gave me. It was possible I would have to be the ambassador between the world and the aliens. The odds were they'd be benevolent, but if not, I had to be prepared to deal with great difficulties. What these might be was completely unpredictable. I had to be ready for anything. Other people thought about their home, their neighborhood, their town. I had to think globally. This was a new concept for me. In every book, movie, and TV show I'd ever seen, the issue was about something local. Never did the whole world become part of the story. It was nearly overwhelming. How much do you expect from me? I asked. Don't lose sleep over it. You have the United States government ready to help you. But if Hal starts talking and asking questions, he may demand answers. You may have to act quickly. You might need the knowledge of Thomas Jefferson and the wisdom of Abraham Lincoln. Oh, is that all? Nothing might happen for 40 years. Don't worry about it now. If I have that much time, I'll major in alien relations. I got home from school before my parents got back from work and brought in the mail. In late March of my senior year, I got a letter with no postage stamp and no address except my name, Theresa Sullivan. It read like this. Where is Jan Struthers? Meet me in the Framingham Library. Saturday, 1 p.m. Jeremy Benton. Who the heck was Jeremy Benton? And what was he saying about Jan? Jan had given me an email address I used to contact her to set up meetings, such as the update meeting last fall. It was janswatchers@snoop.gov. I could find no such government website. Obviously, it was something created just for her. I sent an email. A few minutes later, I got a response. Failure notice. No MX or A records for snoop.gov. For the first time since Hal merged with me, I was afraid. What happened to Jan? Who was Jeremy Benton and what did he want with me? Who could I talk to? Not to Mom and Dad. I was too afraid to go meet this guy. I had decided not to meet him when I had a good idea. Father Doughnutty knew everything. If I brought him along, what could happen at a public library? Father Donutty and I entered the library and looked around. A neatly dressed man in his 40s waved to us from a corner table. This had to be Jeremy. We walked over and he introduced himself. "Hello, I'm Jeremy Benton, personal aide to Prime Minister of England, Peter Blair. Please sit down." We sat, but instead of talking, Jeremy stared at me. "What's the matter?" I asked. "Seeing you close like this took my breath away. Do you realize the effect you have on people?" He meant the effect I had on people who were aware that I was the world's telephone connection to the aliens. "I'm beginning to." "Can we talk about Hal?" "Sure," I said. "Father Donutty knows about him." "Your friend Jan Struthers mailed a package of 4 volumes to Canadian Prime Minister Jean Turgeon. He sent it to Prime Minister Blair. It's clearly a call for help." "What happened to Jan?" "We don't know. All traces of her end when President Martin was sworn in." "How do you know that?" "We have people looking for her. She had credit cards and bank accounts. They were closed. She seems to have disappeared from the earth. Somebody thought she knew too much. Jan Struthers documented everything. The volumes contain thousands of pictures of you from age 10, your activities day by day, your school records and papers, information about your parents and the people who live on your street. I assure you no biography I've ever read has so much information about a human being. Jan Struthers asked that if anything happened to you, the Canadian Prime Minister make a big fuss about it to the press. Apparently something happened to Jan Struthers herself, but the package she sent was actually mailed by her father, Charles Struthers. We think they had some kind of pre-arrangement. He has spied on her father. He appears happy enough. His daughter must be safe somewhere." I thought about all this while my companions waited. If they thought I had ideas about what the heck was going on, they were wrong. "What do you think happened?" I asked. "Your President William Martin was sworn in 2 months ago. We may assume he didn't know about you and Hal before then?" "Yeah, Jan said somebody elected president is briefed on all burning issues before taking office so he could take off running. But I don't think Hal was an emergency. He didn't find out until he was sworn in." "Then we can presume he didn't like the table setting and changed it." "Yeah, didn't Prime Minister Blair ask him?" "Good Lord, no! This might make things very difficult for your friend." "Oh, yeah." Great. We had a perfectly harmless thing going on, and President Martin didn't like it. What was he thinking? "What do you think President Martin is doing?" "This is impossible to guess. Prime Minister Blair assured me he would do nothing." "But we don't know what kind of guy the president is." "Quite right. You've had a President Gardner who knew about you. He changed nothing about your arrangement with Miss Struthers?" "No. Do you think President Martin may cause trouble for me?" Jan Struthers believed so. We assumed she talked with him, but didn't like what he said. "What do you suggest I do?" "You could talk to President Martin yourself, or come to England with your parents. We'll give you new identities." Father Donutty spoke. "The Holy Father is interested in your case. He'll protect you in Rome." I had options. None of them were very good. "No, I'll wait a while and see what happens." "Miss Struthers suggested we bring your situation to the public and get you the public support. Perhaps you can do that yourself. Is there any way you can prove Hal's presence?" Father Donutty wrapped a leg around my ankles to warn me. Jeremy might be from the president and trying to get new information about Hal. I didn't have to tell him anything new. "I give off heat. That's how the government found me. If you have the right equipment, you can see the heat around me." "Ah, we can do that and show the press." "Then what kind of life do I have? They'll never leave me alone." "I see your point. It is a difficult problem." The discussion was over. Father Donutty said he'd keep an eye on me and call the Canadian Prime Minister if anything went wrong. There was nothing else to do for now. Who said youth is the happiest time? That's when we're most vulnerable. I couldn't even share this with my parents. One mistake on their part, and my future was ruined before I had it. All this started with damn Hal. What was Hal? Would I ever know? And as for President Martin, I'd learned that somebody with eloquence may not have seen his powers of understanding receive any aid from education. Ignorance and deficiency of mental improvement could still remain. There's some quirk in their personality that keeps them from becoming wise. The president gave great orations, but he was a babe in the woods when it came to dealing with me. Instead of shutting Jan up, why didn't he send her to talk with me? If she told me the president was worried, I'd agree to meet with him somewhere. What was there in my history that made him think I couldn't be trusted? It was like some of my fellow seniors. 12 years of education hadn't taught them a thing about human nature. They labeled people. They were suspicious. They bullied or were obnoxious in some way. They were not worth much to themselves or anybody else. From age 10, when Hal merged with me, I had tried to make myself the best person I could. If Hal wanted me to do something good, I was ready. If something bad, I wouldn't do it. President Martin should have left things alone.